Well, Saturday's match between Hearts and Dunfermline was important for both clubs, but up until 4 hours before the kick-off, it certainly wasn't due to receive top billing. Sure, Hearts were hoping to complete a full round of league matches unbeaten, but no one expected the bombshell news, which was to become the major talking point of the weekend. George Burley and Hearts had parted company. 24 hours earlier, everything had been maroon in the Hearts' garden. Vladimir Romanov had taken his shareholding to a fully controlling 55%, and everybody seemed happy with what had been a stupendous start to the season. Indeed, 5 days earlier, manager George Burley had spoken happily on Scotsport SPL about club spirit and going for the title.
The spirit's the key, working with players, development, trying to bring young players through and get the whole club there. And of course, if you've got money, you can do things quicker. But the key to any success, that continued improvement, is to get the squad to work together. If we can get into Europe, it would be great. But now we're in first place, we're not going to give it up easy.
By Saturday morning, however, Burley had gone. It still wasn't clear whether he'd walked or been fired, and the chairman was saying nothing till after the game. Hearts' first priority was beating Dunfermline. Commentary from Rob McLean.
Tynecastle helped out by Hartley. Tried the volley from 25 yards, took a deflection, and it's the first corner kick of the match. Expect this to be fizzed in at some pace. Well, it could have been caught by Alan McGregor. Punched it, and the deflected shot from Rudy Scatchell cannons off the crossbar. When you were looking for McGregor to clutch that one unchallenged, he flapped it out, and Scatchell was so close to opening the scoring, so close to goal number 9 of the season. That was Scott Thompson's header. Rudy Scatchell threads it through for Tynecastle, trying to work it on for Camazola. Scatchell involved again, and how? There's no stopping Scatchell. His 9th goal of the season. So much composure about Hearts, and the confidence that comes from heading towards an 11th SPL game unbeaten. Shields heading it away. You get the feeling it's damage limitation for Dunfermline, and they just can't seem to limit the damage. It's 2-0. 2 in just over 2 minutes, and it's Michael Pospisil this time. And Dunfermline contributed to their own downfall there. It was sluggish defending, to say the least. Tynecastle making a nuisance of himself, and Pospisil within inches of scoring his second and Hearts' third. Well, he's going through the full repertoire for us, Rudy Scatchell. I think the Hearts fans like him. Scatchell's free kick, what a delivery for Andy Webster. A huge chance for goal number 3, and Webster failed to take it. Fassis. Pospisil plays it wide for Tynecastle. Skipping away from Zambernardi's challenge. And a decent curling effort from the Lithuanian. Scatchell and Hartley over the ball. Those two combine, and it's Rudy Scatchell! What an opportunity for his second of the game. Darren Young hauled back by Stephen Presley, and there's major trouble for the Hearts captain. He switched off for one fateful moment there. Darren Young was in behind him. An avoidable red card.
The talking now done on the field, the Hearts skipper reflected on the pre-match news about the manager's departure.
He's been a very, very popular man within the dressing room. He's a first-class coach, very much a player's manager. As I've said, very popular with the players. The training sessions he put on were second to none, and we're bitterly disappointed that he's to move on.
Were you given any indication as to why he's moved on?
No indication at all. You know, we as players are sole employees of the football club, and regardless of what happens, we have to continue being professional, and I thought we did that again today.
Then at 6 o'clock, Chairman George Fowkes emerged with the official party line on Burley's departure. How many managers will be able to work the way Mr Romanov works, i.e. he buys the players and the manager's just has to be a simple coach?
That's not the case. That's not the case.
He said that's the case.
That is certainly not the case. Now, of course...
George Burley and Mr Romanov have both said that's the case.
No, it's not. The case has been much more complicated than that.
And so it went on. But whatever the spin, the deteriorating relationship between Burley and Romanov has always been a worry for Andy Walker here on Scotsport SPL.
I'm not convinced that that relationship between the manager and the owner is going to serve them well in the long run, because I think when you've got the owner bringing in players, eventually that's going to be a problem for George Burley.
Tonight, though, a rallying call to the Hearts supporters from a former chairman who remains determined that momentum built up shouldn't now be lost.
I think, Jim, there'll be, at the moment, 2 clubs in Glasgow who are simply waiting for Hearts to fall flat in their face. And what I would say is I would appeal to everybody, all Hearts people, supporters, directors, players, everybody, all Tynecastle people, to pull together and keep Hearts where we've managed to get to this season. That would be the message I would like to put across.
Romanov now rules Hearts. The new man coming in should bear that in mind. Archie, there has been much speculation since Saturday, but we still don't truly know what went on between those two men.
No, I don't think the conspiracy people will, getting the rumours going, will last as long as the JFK conspiracy. But on the other hand, I think somebody has to break the silence. I mean, even George, I don't know what kind of conditions have been put down. Notice in the interview on Saturday evening, I noticed this word, a mutual confidentiality was stressed by George Fowkes there. There's going to be all kinds of rumours. I mean, I've heard all kinds of rumours. I'm sure my colleagues have as well. And at the end of the day, it's not going to serve the constituency well. The Hearts supporters deserve more clarification, more transparency, and so far it hasn't come. And I think they're going to fall flat in their face if it doesn't come.
Graham, we have no facts as such, but fairly informed speculation that Romanov was unhappy that Burley had either been approached or tapped up by Aston Villa. You've heard that as well?
Well, I've heard that, and I've heard 4 or 5 different versions of what happened. As Archie's implying, I think there's been a lot of fairly loose journalism here. Nobody's quite penetrated to the true story. But what we can take for granted was that there was a clash of personalities. We know that. We know Romanov is quite strong-willed about who he wants in the team. He's the paymaster. He has resurrected Hearts. Burley, I think George Burley, my own personal view is that George Burley could probably have handled it a bit better behind the scenes, but he wasn't having any interference from Romanov. The bottom line, though, is that Romanov is the most important person at Hearts. There are some clubs where the manager is the most important figure, but at Ibrox that isn't the case. David Murray's the most important man. At Tynecastle, if it's a question of a personality clash and Romanov or Burley going, it has to be Burley. Romanov is resurrecting Hearts, and that couldn't be endangered.
Andy, you've pointed out the problem all along. You've taken some criticism for that from the Hearts supporters. You've been proved right in the end. The question now is, what other manager would accept those conditions and that level of meddling?
That's going to be a continual problem, and Hearts clearly, in my view, have something to hide. Why else would they insist on a confidentiality clause? George Burley, we're all led to believe, has nothing to hide. Everyone's saying that there was a problem with the owner insisting on players coming to the club, and he wanted more and more Lithuanians in the side. So why have they said to George Burley, we insist on a confidentiality clause? Clearly, Hearts don't want George Burley to speak. I don't think it's the other way about.
Archie, they've said tonight, Romanov said tonight, Valdas Ivanauskas, it will not be, definitely not, so it's not his fellow countrymen, but they are spreading the net far and wide, it would appear.
Well, it's going to be difficult because they've got to explain why the last manager left. I mean, we can talk all we like about this. You can either lob a bomb into Tynecastle to get the answer, or you can try to be a statesman about it. But at the end of the day, if they're going to clam up and not going to say anything, it's all about conjecture. and that's all it is. I don't know who's going to take the job. By the way, somebody said to me earlier tonight, nobody will take it. There'll be a queue for the job. Maybe not the best talent, but anybody, if there's a vacancy in football nowadays, there's a queue for it. But prestige, I don't think anybody will have that who goes for that job.
Let's hear from some Hearts fans with Julian.
Thanks, Jim. Sandy, starting with you, the victory at the weekend overshadowed by what was happening. What's your thoughts about what's been going on?
Well, first and foremost, I think that Hearts have to come out and let the fans know exactly what's going on. But the fans also have to just continue getting straight behind the team. It's most important that we continue at the top of the league and strive to get into the Champions League.
And who do you think's the man that's most likely, or who would you like to see coming into the position vacated by Burley?
Well, all the rumours seem to say that it's going to be Bobby Robson at the moment. I would actually like to see him come in with a younger manager underneath him.
Right. Robbo left Ross County today. Do you think it could be Robbo and Robson, a Robbo Bobby type set up there at Tynecastle, or is that imagination?
It's hard to see. I don't know if John Robertson would come back. I know his heart's there, but...
But it's the usual kind of speculation, which we've come to expect. I mean, the names in the hat. Souness was there at the weekend. You know, they're talking about Lothar Matthäus, Mick McCarthy.
Neville Scala.
Yeah. Is he the most likely, do you think, after Robson?
Oh, he said that he needed 3 months to make up a decision, and that's 3 months. So, is there something in that? I don't know.
Well, who does know? I mean, a lot of emails, as you know, Jim, coming in since it happened on Saturday. Alan Doyle kind of hits the nail on the head. We as fans have a right to know exactly why Burley left. We are paying for this confidentiality agreement through purchases of merchandise and tickets. Therefore, we are part of the agreement. Legally, probably not. Morally, I think he's got a point, Jim.
He maybe has. Craig McIntosh has emailed as well. He says Hearts winning after Burley's departure shows it was the team that improved and not the manager. Well, let's hear now from the Hearts Chief Executive, Phil Anderton. This was what he had to say earlier tonight.
I'm not for 1 minute trying to make out that other people in the club or outside of the club don't have views on who should be in the team. Supporters, myself and others. But ultimately, it's down to the manager to choose who goes out in the park, and that has been the case and will be going forward.
And one man's name who you never mentioned there was Mr. Romanov.
Well, of course, Mr. Romanov, especially if he's the guy who's funding the club.
How healthy is that?
I think it's perfectly healthy to have people with a view on how the team should be constructed. Where it becomes unhealthy, and I concur absolutely, is when you know, the manager is not given that say on who should be in the team, but that's not the case.
Rahman Bardwaj asking the questions. Graham, what do you make of what Phil Anderton had to say there?
Well, first of all, there's always moral indignation about a confidentiality clause. I don't know why people get bothered about it. If Hearts don't want their dirty washing to be hung out in public like any other business, that's fine by me. I don't care about that. I think that when I say that Burley's probably handled it wrongly, I think that Romanov to a certain extent did have the right to ask vigorous questions about the team, so long as Burley's autonomy as the final arbiter of the team was not sacrificed. I think Romanov has every right to ask some questions. It's interesting that Bobby Robson's name is mentioned. I think Hearts will approach Bobby Robson this week. I don't think Bobby Robson will take the job, but I do think if he does take the job, he'll handle that situation differently. He'll be more diplomatic and less spiky towards Romanov than Burley was.
I think there'll also be a problem with the players, Graham. It was an unmistakable gesture, Jim, to see Paul Hartley and Rudy Scatchell say on their T-shirts after the game, "For the gaffer." Now, there are players who are out of contract there, and I think there will be unrest in the dressing room. And having played with Celtic at a very difficult time when all the unrest and the chaos was dominating the back pages, some of the front pages as well, it gets to the people most who care about the club, and that's the Scottish contingent: Craig Gordon, Stephen Presley, Andy Webster and Paul Hartley.
Archie, these players, though, they're in a great position in the SPL. They'll surely want to go in and win it. They'll never get a better chance.
No, they won't. But back to the point that Graham made here about the business of the football business. Football is rather different from any other business. You could maybe liken it to the fact that shareholders will turn up eventually and ask why certain moves and swaps or sackings were made on a board. The constituency, part of it is down there in our studio tonight, asking and wondering what's happening.
Well,
they're paying out season tickets
Burley
and so on.
might need protecting. Well, if he does need protecting, I'm happy with
Well,
that.
I don't know.
We don't know
who needs protecting?
Well, we don't know. That's why there's a confidentiality clause.
That is precisely why myself and others and the supporter down there are saying, explain it to us.
Graham, what might he need protecting from?
Well, I don't know. I do know that in the end of George Burley's career at Derby County, there were certain issues there that were controversial, and Derby County didn't want to speak about it. George Burley didn't want to speak about it. Funnily enough, we've got a similar situation again. Right. I happen to think George Burley is an excellent coach. I happen to suspect there is nothing untoward in terms of what George Burley's been doing.
But, Graham,
the point is, if there is something there, I respect the right of a confidentiality clause. As a journalist, we always object to it.
Legalistically, I respect it. But morally, the inference being there might be something sinister. Now, there might not be. There might be, there might not be.
But
and I think it's unfair in that sense.
You're speaking as if we've got a moral right, an indignant moral right to know. None of us have a right to know.
Well, these people down there have a right to know.
And
They're
we don't
paying
have
the
a
money
right to
through
go
the
on any
turnstiles.
further. We're going to have to